everyone, welcome to another video and location here in New York City. Today I want to show you the Randalls and Wards Islands located here in the cozy position between Manhattan, Queens and the Bronx. And so let's begin by walking across the RFK Bridge from Queens to the island. I needed to do some walking in order to take some of the stress out from my everyday life. I used to deal with stress by going to the gym, but my schedule in the last few years has become so chaotic that instead I do these walks. And believe me, after you walk for about 12 miles like I did that day, I actually enjoy sitting back down in front of the computer for some meetings and grading. It's funny because I began my walk on the bridge and I wanted to show you here on this chain-linked fence how shaky it is. Which again, it's normal, nothing to worry about, but in general, the walking path is very narrow and the banister itself is very low. And you only have this chain-linked barrier on top, but it looked to me like it was installed as an afterthought. Like in some places, they even ran out of the material and you have like huge gaps and it just looks like it was not supposed to be there. And I jokingly thought to myself, okay, yeah, this makes perfect sense. The bridge was built during the Great Depression era, and this is actually kind of fitting for the bridge. However, the jokes in my head ended when I reached the middle of the bridge and there was absolutely no barrier, just this very low railing. And again, as bikes are zooming by you, you need to stay all the way to the right, otherwise you might cause an accident. But that means you are literally on the edge and the railing is like on your waist height. Here I am holding the camera, for example, at my chest level, and so you can see the banister is not that high. I'll be honest, it's pretty scary, and for those who are afraid of heights, it's an experience, I will tell you that. But look at the gorgeous views you get, and especially that of the Hellgate Bridge. But still, it is kind of scary with that low railing. It's as if the workers cut corners here. Installed those safety barriers, boys? Sure did, boss. Boom. A suicide prevention number. It's so much faster and cheaper. Can't say that no safety measures were taken. When I was growing up, this was the Triborough Bridge, but in 2008, the name was officially changed to the RFK Bridge. Robert Francis Kennedy, who, among other things, served as a senator from New York and was shot and killed in 1968, just 5 years after his brother, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, was also shot and killed. Work on this bridge began just days before the Great Depression of 1929. Hence, by 1932, the future of the bridge was in jeopardy, as the money was no longer there. However, the design of the bridge was modified and simplified. For example, originally, the bridge was designed to have 2 levels of car traffic, but eventually only one was built. Hence, not only was money saved in not building the other deck, but also less wires were needed to hold the roadway up, and the towers were redesigned as well, all to cut costs, and the bridge was completed, opening to traffic in 1936. Now that we are on the island itself, let me go all the way around, showing you some of the highlights here. Maybe some of you wondered what it was like below the Triborough Bridge. Well, here you go. In general, I have to admit that it's a really great walk around the island. It's peaceful, relaxing. In fact, before the 1950s, all of this was made up of 3 small islands. There was a very small island called the Sunken Meadow Island, which was combined with Randalls Island in the 1950s. And then in the 1960s, the Randalls Island and Wards Island were also joined together by landfill. This channel here, what is known as the Little Hellgate Channel, was a lot more extensive, separating the islands into 2. Those buildings in the distance are a psychiatric center. In fact, this island has a very interesting history, as in the past it served many purposes. On Wards Island, there used to be a state emigrant refuge, a hospital for sick immigrants, which opened in 1847, as well as shortly afterwards, a mental asylum and a smallpox hospital. On Randalls Island, there used to be a children's hospital and an asylum for kids, as well as a house of refuge, which was a place for youth with criminal records. Today, there is the Manhattan Psychiatric Center, whose roots go back to the 19th century on this island, and the Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center, which is a maximum security center for mentally ill who have been charged with a crime. Not to mention, the islands at one point also served as potter's field, and thousands of bodies were buried here at one point or another. A potter's field is a common grave where unknown or unidentified or homeless people are buried. In the 1870s, the potter's field was moved to Hart Island, which is an island in the Bronx, which still serves that purpose. And here we come to the Icahn Stadium. Before this stadium, there used to be a bigger one on this site called the Downing Stadium, which was demolished in 2002. It hosted such events as the men's and women's Olympic trials for track and field, as well as other events such as concerts. And get this, the first televised football game in 1939 between Fordham and Waynesburg universities. Just a short distance behind the stadium, we have, or I should say we had, a driving range. And I believe there were even batting cages here, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder if they will ever open it again. From the looks of it, it does not seem like there is anything happening just yet. And as you see, there's a lot of construction on the island, with new ramps, roads, and projects like the Champlain Hudson Power Express, which I guess it says here will provide about 20% of New York City's energy. But it's actually an interesting project, which will soon be bringing clean energy, so from hydropower and wind power, all the way from Canada by a high voltage cable to New York City. Next to all of this activity, we have the police department with their harbor unit, and behind them, the Harlem River lift span crossing into Manhattan. At the end of the island, there is a spot for a kayak launch. It's not big, but hey, it's something. But look at the water, it actually looks pretty clean. Although I don't know, there's a wastewater treatment plant nearby on the island, so sometimes looks can be deceiving. But also here is a good spot to show you why these waters can be quite dangerous. You see it here, it's all nice and quiet, and then boom, you hit a small rapid. But in general, this was always a dangerous location for ships with strong currents and many rocks posing danger to ships. In fact, at one point, the Army Corps of Engineers blasted away many rocks from these waters and cleared the area, so it's not as bad today as it was for the first explorers. Here we have the RFK Bridge crossing into the Bronx, and next to it, we have a small truss bridge crossing into the Bronx as well, which is part of the Hellgate Bridge, used by trains. But check this out. Right on top, we got some interesting information. For example, the last time it was painted, so I guess July 1999. Wow, so 25 years ago. The color of the paint, what is the name of the paint manufacturer, and so on. Kind of interesting if you are into that type of quirky information. Below the structure, you have a nice pathway for pedestrians and bicycles, and it is really a very pleasant walk. If you continue walking straight, you will pass over the Bronx Kill on a small bridge, and now you are in the borough of Bronx. But let me stick to the Randalls and Wards Islands for this trip. So let's cross back and make our way around the island itself to the place where we began this trip. Because at this point, I was slowly beginning to regret wearing the wrong pair of shoes. You have at least 2 places on the island where you can rent city bikes and restrooms next to them. So you do not need to walk this many miles like I did. In fact, I would highly recommend coming to the island on a bicycle if you can. You will be able to see everything and really enjoy yourself. As doing everything on foot, I'll be honest, is a little bit too much. But the other thing that you see is fields everywhere. In fact, there are over 60, yes, 60 fields on the island for baseball and soccer. And like you see here, plenty of soccer goals. Maybe even too much. Here you have the sunken meadow fields. So we are standing in what was the smallest third island originally. Here, not only do we have plenty of fields, but we also see a power station in Astoria, Queens, across the East River. And again, look at the currents and the movement of the water. There is a tennis academy with many tennis courts, even indoor tennis courts, but here I can't show you too much. How would you feel trying to enjoy a game of tennis with your friends and some stranger would appear out of nowhere with their noses in the window and a camera recording? Kinda creepy, right? So let's go back following along the path of the Hellgate Bridge and look at this cool span. The Hellgate Bridge is actually made up of 3 bridges. A small truss bridge, which I just showed you, crossing into the Bronx. You have the main steel arch bridge, which we will take a look at in a moment. And this bridge right here is what's called the inverted bowstring truss, which supports the weight of the bridge just inverted, so upside down from what generally people are used to seeing. This section went over the water which separated the islands, the Randalls and the Wards Islands, before the 1960s. Below it, we have the wastewater treatment facility and New York Fire Department Training Academy. But take a look at how massive these towers are of the main bridge. The Hellgate Bridge opened in 1917, being the longest steel bridge in the world at that time. It originally had 4 railroad tracks, although today there are 3. But it was built in about 5 years, which is pretty impressive, as the whole section is again made up of 3 bridges and multiple supporting arches, and it all has a distance of over 3 miles. It was designed by Gustav Lindenthal, who was born in the Austrian Empire at that time and then came to the United States at the age of 24. and not only designed this bridge, but also the Queensboro Bridge, what today is the Koch Bridge, which connects Queens with Manhattan. This bridge served and still does as a very important link between New England, so cities like Boston, for example, and New York City. In fact, this bridge was so important that Nazi Germany had a plan to destroy it during World War II in order to disrupt the American war effort. Don't believe me? Just look up Operation Pastorius. Just the graffiti. That's annoying to see. And I'm sorry, the YouTube world can completely disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think it just destroys the beauty of the structure itself. Plus, come on, if you want to do that, do it on your own house, not destroying somebody else's property or the city's property, as cleaning it off is not easy, especially from these heights, and the longer it stays on the structure, the harder it will probably be to remove. Not to mention that the process is probably gonna be costly and potentially might damage the structure itself, so not cool. And here we are making our final loop around the island, below the RFK Bridge and overlooking Queens and Manhattan. It is a very beautiful, gorgeous view, but the day that I went, it was just cloudy all morning long, hence the video is a bit dark and gloomy. I do apologize about that, but the worst part is that when I was leaving and I was getting into my car, the sun finally came out, but that was already past noon. That small little island right there is called the Mill Rock Island, and it supposedly used to have a mill on it, hence the name. But today it is uninhabited, and I do not believe it is open to the general public. From this side of the island, we also have the Wards Island Bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge connecting the island with Manhattan. And in this corner of the island, there is the migrant shelter. In recent months, there was many migrants entering New York City, and this is one of the hot topics today. This is one of those locations of where some of them are being kept. Now, I do not want to go into the details on this issue or some of my thoughts about it, because I always saw these Sunday videos as being light, for entertainment, and a little bit of history, but basically trying to make it fun. If you would like to pick my brain a little bit about some of these hot topics, like this one for example, or about education or being a professor in New York City, I would love to do videos like that. But these would be extra ones, which I would be posting during the week, so kind of like an addition to this channel. And I was thinking of maybe doing something like that, but this will have to be next year, once the current semester is over for me and I have a little bit more time on my hands. So if any of you have any questions or ideas or anything like that, send me an email, post comments, and I will be collecting all of these and possibly making some extra videos in the next few months. But in general, walking through here, it was a little bit troubling as you see small kids standing by the path, and then right next to them you have groups smoking weed. In fact, it's something not only that you can smell, but it's clearly visible, the wide use of drugs. As I walked through, I just wasn't sure what to think about the whole setup. It was just weird, to say the least. But anyway, it's time to head back to Queens over the RFK Bridge one more time. And I hope all of you enjoyed this video and another place here in New York. And I wish all of you a safe week, and I will see you again in a few days in another location here in Gotham. Take care, everyone.